Hi, girls. Welcome back to another episode of Girls Who Get It. I'm your host, Memphis. Thank you for joining me. And this week, I wanted to do something a little bit different. To give you a bit of backstory, I have been sick the last week, I've been really sick, down with the flu, whatever. And it's really got me thinking a lot. Like, I know my previous episode where we were talking about your hot girl habits to change your mood and your mindset is that it really had me thinking during that time that when you do all of these actions and you use all of these strategies, they're really, really good. But I really wish that someone had explained to me in the very beginning when I started the self-help journey and started doing all these strategies and learning all these processes. I wish somebody had have told me this, because me and my girlfriends, we talk about this all the time. And it's basically the fact that when you start learning, or, you start jumping into self-development and you want to, grow your self-love and improve your self-worth, that all of the things that you do to get to that point, in the beginning, you feel as though, I'm going to learn these strategies and they're going to be magical and it's going to change who I am. I'm going to get to a point where I finally feel healed, or I finally feel better, I finally know all of the answers. And I truly have done it for as long enough now that I know that it is simply not the case. It is, you are constantly evolving, you are constantly changing. Things are never going to get to a point where you're like, I'm at the destination, it's all fixed, it's all better. And I want this episode to be something that I wish people had have told me about your journey to self-love, to self-acceptance. And I took a lot of time to reflect during the week and write these down in my phone, some massive long-ass notes. And I'd love to share these with you. And I just want this to be for anyone that is on that journey or is feeling like, hey, I'm doing all of these things, but it's not getting me to a point where I feel like I'm better now. And I want this to be a reminder for you that this is a journey, and really the progress is made in the actual journey. There is no real destination that you get to one day and you say, oh, I'm so much better. But it's all of the things that you learn along the way about yourself and about how to, how you show up in certain situations and how you actually think about things. And it's really that mindset behind, I know how to handle this better now, but it's not a situation where you're going to be like, I am better now. It's all done. It's all good. So I would like to invite you into my notes section in my phone, and let's get into it. Now, number one, and this is something that I have, I ruminate, and I would love to know if anybody feels the same, if they have been on that journey with themselves and they're at a point now where they're like, you know what? I know that it teaches you some great skills, but it doesn't fucking teach you everything, and it's not going to completely change you as a person. So I would just like you to know this, and I would love to know if anybody else feels the same way about this along their journey. And number one is, it gives you an inner power. It's a new ability to control your thoughts, and then in turn that shapes your action. But with this, it takes you down a path of deep knowing. And once you get to this place, it's not that you can turn around and come back to the place that you were before, where ignorance was simply bliss. Because now what will happen is that you will still act and do things the same way you always have sometimes, not all of the time, but sometimes. And when you do, your ability to judge your actions and hold yourself accountable for them in your mind is as powerful as it is powerless. Because as much as we tell ourselves that we have changed and evolved, when we do go back into our old patterns of acting or thinking, you're going to be, and you always are, you're 10 times harder on yourself. For this. And this is only bad if your self-growth is not evolving, and if you are learning the actions of the person you want to be, or not taking that action. And actually, what I'm trying to say is, in other words, are you actually learning from your mistakes? When you do this, you get to a point with yourself where you're like, I know why I'm acting like this. I know why I'm thinking like this. I know that I should be, managing my thoughts in a way that are in a perspective that is positive, or that, I know how to get through this. But it's also at the same time, it's really frustrating when you do find yourself falling back into that habit or that thinking or that way of thinking, and you are so fucking down on yourself because you're like, I know this, I know this pattern, I know that it shows up for me, I know how to work through this. So it's one of those things that when you go into this self-growth, it's that you become so much more self-aware, but at the same time, we're not perfect. And I know, for example, I will catch myself out thinking in a negative way or doing something that I've always done. And I'm like, I know how to deal with this. I know why I'm doing this. And then I just get angrier and angrier with myself. So it's one of those things where if you are not learning from your mistakes and if you are not progressing and if you are not evolving on this self-growth journey, all that's going to happen is that you're going to be more self-aware of the way that you're acting the way that you do, or the way that you, or the when you're thinking the way that you do, but you're just going to be angry with yourself because you're going to be like, I know that I'm doing this now and I'm not fucking doing the right thing. So and me and my girlfriends, we talk about this all the time, and it's just like, you're doing something, you're like, oh, I'm feeling like this today, or I'm acting like this today, and you're like, I know what the steps are that I should be taking because I've done this work. But sometimes, and this is one of those things where it constantly reminds you that you're always learning, you're always growing. There is not a point that you get to and you're like, oh yeah, I'm all healed, I know it's all good now. You just get older, you get wiser, but you get smarter, but you know yourself well enough. So it's one of those things, and it's like, and this is something that I wrote down that I wanted to say, is that really, in other words, are you learning from your mistakes, or are you just telling yourself this is who you are now, and then each time you fuck up pretending you're healed, but in reality you're just creating a new pattern as unhealthy as the last and calling it growth? Because it's a catch-22. When you do all of this growth, you're doing it for a reason, and sometimes you become so self-aware that you basically are shooting yourself in the foot. So I wanted that's number one reminder for anyone on their self-growth journey. Number two, now it is a very personal journey, and it's not something that you can share step by step and expect others to understand. For me, this was powerful, and I hope for others they look at it in the exact same way. The fun part is always sharing with others what you did, how you're feeling, but really the best part of it all is just sharing the new person you have evolved into with other people. Introducing that new person to people, and you stepping into the world and being like, hi world, this is me now, knowing and holding your own fucking hand when things don't go as expected, and becoming your own best friend in your mind. So I believe it is a very personal journey that we go on, because when you are involved in your self-growth, it's all about you. It's really all about you. It comes down to you, and it puts you in a position that if you do it properly, that one, you will show up better for yourself, two, you will show up better for other people, but all round you are evolving as a person. And it's usually learning to understand your emotional patterns, the recognition, the things that you know that you need in order to be a better person. But at the same time, I found in the beginning when I was doing that, when you're trying to share it with people and if you spend too much time trying to explain yourself to other people and share what you're doing with other people, they're not going to understand, they're not going to get it. And you don't want to get stuck in that mind frame where say, for example, you're talking to your nana about it, and nan's got no idea about self-love, self-growth. She's very, A to B, like doesn't believe that mental health exists and all of those things, because I know that's very common in the older generation, and they just don't get it. And you will become more frustrated trying to explain to somebody that doesn't actually understand where you're coming from. So don't go into this with the idea that other people are going to be there to support you or understand you or vouch you, because this is not about them. This is about you, and you want this to be a personal thing. It's about you learning about yourself and you being able to manage your own thoughts and your own emotions and the things that you do. It's about you having more control over your own mind and becoming best friends with your mind, because it's so important to understand that you spend so much time in your own head. I know I do, and it makes me emotional thinking about it, is that you don't want to be at war with your own mind, because there is nothing more unsettling or unstable about you not being happy inside of yourself. So use this time when you are on this journey to understand that it's not about other people understanding you. It's not about you explaining yourself to other people. It's about you getting to know yourself and you understanding what you need as a human being, because you will be a better person for it and you will show up as a better person for it, but you don't need to go around explaining yourself. And I think that's really important, because in the beginning, you know, when you're like, oh, I've learned this new thing, or oh, this is, you know, I do this when this is happening to me, and you'll try and explain it to someone and they'll just think, oh, you know, you're a bit crazy. But it's that everybody has their own ways of dealing with things and they know how to manage their own mind. Strong people know how to manage their own mind, and it doesn't matter how you do it, as long as you can do it and it works for you, then that's completely fine. You know what I mean? Whatever the fuck it is, whatever you need to do, if it makes you feel better, if it works for you, then go and fucking do it. That's all I can say. Number 3, your interactions with other people will be very different when you start to understand yourself. It helps you to understand other people better. You usually won't look at people the same, and you will expect more from others than you have before, or possibly you will expect nothing more, but you will have a greater knowing of what you deserve. If self-growth has taught me anything, it was that you cannot control what other people do, and only you can control how you react to them. But just because you know this doesn't mean it actually gets easier. It's basically like you holding the rule book, but also having to give into those rules. And unless you accept these at the core, you will continue to feel disappointed by the world. And this is so, it's so close to my heart, is that when I went on this journey, it was all about, not allowing other people's actions to control the way that I thought and I showed up and all of those things, and being able to be okay with the fact that what other people choose to do, you cannot control that. And when you get to that point, it's a really powerful point to be at, because I know, and I can't be the only one, is that it's really hard. And I know that you do learn this as you get older, but when you're young, it's like you want to control people, or you want people to do what you would like them to do. And when they don't, it's really hard to, work through it or get over it or understand it. But once you get to a point where you realize that you can't control other people, the only thing you can do is control how you react to it. And once you actually get to that point, you feel like it's like a fucking superpower. It's like an absolute superpower, because it doesn't matter what other people do. You have control over your own mind, and you feel strong enough within yourself that you know that whatever action they take towards you or around you is not actually going to affect you as a person. But I will say this, is that it's not a one size fits all. And it can be very different for very different situations. So, in the workplace, it may be easy to get to a point where you're like, I don't give a fuck what Barry does. It doesn't affect me. Water off a duck's back. But then, say, for example, at home or in a relationship or somewhere where you have a lot of emotions invested, it can be a hell of a lot harder. Like, it's a different scenario, it's a different situation. And I will be the first person to admit that I go back, I can relapse, you know what I mean? I can go back and forth, and I'll get to a point where I'll be like, hey, hold up, you need to, you know what you're doing here. Going back to what we were talking about in part 1, is that you need to remind yourself of the things that you already know, because your emotions are very strong and they can overcome you at any time. So I would like to say that I, hand on heart, have got to that place where I'm like, the way that other people react doesn't fucking control me. But then, say, for example, if it's something like in my relationship where I have a really, really tight emotional charge towards it, it's harder for me. But at the same time, when you've got the skills and you know exactly what you need to do, you've basically got the blueprint, but you just actually need to use it. So I just want this to be a reminder to anyone that just because you know all of these skills doesn't actually mean that in every single scenario that you come up against that you're actually going to be like, yep, I've got this one, because sometimes you're just not there. it's real. It may be really emotional. You could be having a bad day. You know what I mean? No one's fucking perfect. So just be really, really aware that just because you learn these strategies and these skills does not mean that you're at a place where, you know what I mean, you're all healed, you're all good, because that's certainly not the case. And I think that's one of the biggest lessons that I would like anyone to take out of this, is that this is growth. It goes on and on and on. It's not something that you just wake up one day and you're like, oh, I'm fixed. I've got all the strategies. I've read all the books. I'm all better now. That's not what it is. These are like tools that you have in your toolkit. But sometimes you can get to a point where you don't actually know which fucking tool to use. And that's when you need to take a step back, take a deep breath and say, hey, I've got this in the bag. I just need to figure out exactly which one it is. And that can take a little bit. That doesn't always, that's not always forefront of mind, especially when we're emotional. It's not always forefront of mind. And sometimes we even know what we should be doing and we choose not to do it. So I just want this to be a reminder to anyone that don't feel like just because you think you know, or that you do know, that it always has to be the thing that you turn to, because sometimes we need to just have a little emotional breakdown. Sometimes we need to, you know what I mean? To have a cry, or to, feel like, oh, this is just not working for me at the moment. Sometimes you need that release, and it's okay. It's not as if when you do this that you've got all the answers. So just remember that. It doesn't actually solve every single fucking problem, but it certainly does make them easier. All right. Number 4. None of this works unless you put it into practice. What I was just saying. You can read every book. You can know all the things, the laws, the teachings that have been passed down for hundreds of years, but you will never truly understand or evolve unless you put into practice what you have accepted as truth, because it takes using these strategies to get you through hard times or to move you through different stages of your life. When you start to cling to these ideologies because you have nothing left to grasp onto, and then the universe responds in a way that you did not expect, then and only then will you begin to lean into the possibilities of your own power more and more. And this is where the real magic lies. And this is what I was just saying, is that you need to use the strategies to understand which strategies are going to work for you. So when you go into, this self, there are so many different aspects of it. You get into the manifestation and the deep breathing, or, understanding your inner psyche and all the things about you. You could be really deep into astrology and looking at, your planet placements and like how that affects you and how that shows up in your life and all of those things. And then on top of that, when you start to get into those things, what comes next is that you go on Instagram, you know what I mean? There's all these things about manifestation and mindfulness and deep breathing, and do this course and understand this and be this person, and, do this ritual 3 times a day and say these things to yourself before you go to sleep, and then do this and read this book. And it's like, you have to be really careful about, one, the strategies what you actually soak in, because there is so much to take in that it's not possible for you to be across everything and understand it. Like, I know me personally, I'm deep into my astrology. I always look at my planets. I love Chinese astrology as well. So that's something that I really lean on when it comes to, my year, or how, like, what am I doing? What's showing up for me this year? I am really into, I like words of affirmation and manifestation, but I have created all of these to work for me. Because every single person that you speak to is on this journey, or is doing this kind of thing, they will be like, oh, have you tried this? Have you looked at this? Have you read this? Like, this really worked for me. Like, you should give this a go. So you need to be really careful about not taking on too much at once, because it can be really overwhelming. You can't do it all. And what you want the end goal of this all to be is really for you to just understand yourself better, and just have some strategies up your sleeve that are going to work for you. So if you start doing something and you feel like, oh, this just doesn't feel authentic to me, or this just doesn't, I don't feel like this is going to add value to my life in any way, shape or form, then don't do it. Find things that you like. Yeah, I like the way this feels. Yeah, this feels good for me. Oh, this actually is helping me. Like, if you come to a situation like, you know what, fucking, I'm going to take 10 deep breaths and it actually works for you, well, then go hard. You know what I mean? That is a strategy that's going to work for you. So use that strategy. But don't get so tied down into knowing everything and, oh, I've done this and I've done that, because that's not the goal. The goal is actually for these to be helpful for you. So don't listen to what other people say. Yes, you can take advice from people, because sometimes you speak to a girlfriend and she's like, oh, I tried this. And I'm like, oh, wow, I'm going to give that a shot. But if it's something that you feel like is just totally not in alignment with who you are and it doesn't feel like you're getting anything out of it, then don't waste your fucking time, because if it's not for you, it's not going to work for you. So just be really mindful of that, is that when you start this, you're like, oh my God, there's so many things that can help. You can be dancing under the moonlight and putting crystals under your fucking pillowcase and all of those things. But it's a very personal journey, and everything that you do should be solely for you, because that is what we're doing this for. We're doing this for ourselves. Number 5 is that it can be a really lonely space, self-growth, because it is personal and you are doing it for yourself. Now, this space, it's because you really need to be in a place of deep solitude or of deep searching for something more in your life. And it introduces you to a new level of detachment and creates an additional layer of I hate people into your life. So just be really mindful of that. I know when I started my journey, the more that you understand yourself, the more that you understand other people. And the more you realize that most people are fucking idiots, or you just don't have time for them, But I feel that there is two sides to this story, 100%. When you understand yourself more and you understand other people more, I've always been a real empathetic person, not sympathetic, but empathetic. So I can put myself in other people's shoes where, say, for example, someone says something to you out of the blue, they're rude, and you're just like, Barry's a cunt. But you have that ability to understand that, yeah, Barry is a cunt. He's being a cunt today, but maybe he's had a really shit morning. Maybe something's happened with him at home. Maybe he's just not self-aware enough to understand that the way that he's showing up and the actions that he's taking towards other people is not very nice. And it gets you to a point where you're like, you know what? That's okay, because we all have fucking bad days, and I'm not going to sit here and say I don't have bad days. So I'm going to let this one slide. I'm not going to let it get to me. I'm not going to, I'm not going to react, or I'm not going to let this, because I understand, because I get it. But it's also the other end of the spectrum where you do understand people. And it's just like, when you become more self-aware and when you've done the work, when somebody else hasn't, it just makes you think, you're fucking lazy. Like, how can you be so unaware of the way that you are and the actions that you take, and how that shows up for other people? How do you not have that ability to want that? And look, there's a lot of different ways that you can look at that. People just don't understand. People are simply lazy. People just don't give a fuck. And look, at the end of the day, I sometimes sit there and think to myself, you know what? Ignorance is bliss. And sometimes I wish that I was more ignorant like other people, because they seem to be getting through life pretty bloody easily. So just be really mindful of that. Is when you start this, it is a lonely road, and it's supposed to be, because it's personal. It's you on your own. And a lot of the time, the reason why you're doing this is because maybe you haven't spent a lot of time on your own. You don't know yourself very well. So getting to know yourself can feel lonely, but then you will get to a point where you are so happy within yourself, happy with yourself, happy with your own mind, that you won't care. But just be mindful that it is a lonely place, and it can be difficult, because especially when you are realizing all of these patterns and you have all this recognition about the way that you show up, if you do a lot of reflection on the way that you have been and the way that you've acted and things that you've done, it can be pretty fucking raw, pretty fucking like intense for you to be like, oh, I know why I used to act like that, or I know why I used to say those things or do this, and like you spend a lot of time in reflection with yourself, and it's quite daunting. It can be very, very in your face, but it's designed to be, and it's designed to help you grow, and it's designed to help you evolve. So get to know yourself, get to love yourself, because if you spend enough time by yourself, you will get to love yourself more, and it is a really good place to be. So that is tip number 5. Where are we? Number 6. The more you learn, the more you realize that you aren't healthy or at a place that you would consider to be fixed or better. And if anything, it will constantly remind you that you're a work in progress, and that is never going to change. But that's how we are built, to learn, to grow, and to change, and do this consistently over and over again. And growing is what happens in between all of those processes, finding that next level within yourself, and then again realizing that that next level doesn't mean healed or happy or a better version of you. It's just growth. I think the most important lesson you learn from it all is self-acceptance. For you have the teachings, you get the rules, you can do the things, but being able to forgive yourself and try again, knowing it's not all for nothing, is where the real growth is. And that is a really strong takeaway, is that you get to a point where you realize that you're never going to get to a position where you're fixed or you're healed or it's all good, and you've done the work, you've read the book, and you can slam that one shut and move on to the next. That's not how it is. So it's a constant process. It's a constant, like, you're constantly evolving, you're growing and you're learning, and you're growing and evolving and you're learning, and then you'll have something happen again, and then you'll come back to it. And it's just that once you understand it, you will realize that you're never actually going to get to a place where you're like, oh yeah, it's all better, I'm fixed now, because that's not the way that it works. But it is lovely to be at a position where you're like learning, putting those practices in when it comes to things that come up in your life, and then working through them. And then it's like you're consistently leveling up. So it's like you understand the rules, you understand the aim, you understand the game, and you realize that it's just a big fucking game. Life is a game, because you will work through something and you'll think that you're in a position where you're like, oh, so much better now. But then something else will come up, or it will be a different situation, or it will, trigger another old wound, or it will do something that you haven't actually really touched on before. And you'll think, oh shit, I'm not all the way through this, am I? And you won't ever be. But it's really nice to be able to sit in a space where you can reflect and say, hey, I've changed the pattern of the way that I used to do things, and the way that I am showing up on the actions that I am taking now, and the thought process that I'm going through now is so different than what it was before I started this, and before I started to understand myself better. So it's a beautiful space to be, but I'm just saying it's not any easier. It's not any easier. It's like, especially what I was saying before, is that ignorance is bliss. It's that when you know and you still do the things, then it makes it 10 times harder for you to be forgiving of yourself, because you're like, you're smart at this. So it's like, I'm one step ahead of you at all times, but also I know when I'm fucking myself over. So that would be tip number 5. Now, my final word would be for this one. And this episode is, I really wanted to do this episode yesterday, and I sat down and I was like trying to think of things to say, and because I was sick, it was really hard for me to get to a point where I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to say this. But then after I had a nap, it really came to me. And me and my girlfriends talk about this all the time. Like, in the beginning, we were always like, oh, I'm reading this book and I'm doing this and doing this meditation. And like, we were at a point where we're like, oh, we have cracked the code. We have cracked it. Like, we're better now, like, things are going to be so much easier. Like, life is going to be so good. We can just power through it. And then now we say to ourselves, it's just, mate, you're always learning. You're always growing. It's a process. It's like, You'll be sending voice notes like, why is this happening to me? This is the worst day ever. Like, why do I feel like this? I know I shouldn't be thinking like this. And then it's just like, girl, it's because like, it's just the way that we are. We're human. We're here to go through these things and like understand that. But just because you understand yourself doesn't mean that it gets any easier. So this would be my final word that I want anyone to take away from this. And that would be careful not to become your own self-walking contradiction. And this is where this is where your own moral compass comes in. You need to decide what you accept, what you want to live by, and what you know isn't going to serve you in the time and the place you are right now. Not everything is suited for every situation. Not every right belief or action is going to get you to a place of self-acceptance. Have you heard the saying, horses for courses? And it is very important that you remember this. Where are we? It's very important you remember who you are at your core, and you do not put yourself in a box when you are most certainly not a square, but you are a triangle. And this is why the journey must be done alone, because no one can tell you what you need more than you can. No one can point you in the direction of self-love or self-acceptance and say, follow this route, or I have it mapped out for you. This is a journey you must take on your own, using your gut as your compass and your heart as the signal that a wrong turn has been taken or that a U-turn is required to get back on track. And this may seem annoying or off-putting to know that there isn't a fast track for what you're searching for. But as I've mentioned time and time again, it's the journey that will flower your soul and feed your heart. And the mind is the it's the journey that will flower your soul and feed your heart and the mind. Now, the destination itself is just another spot on the map, and you will reach that and then outgrow that, and your journey will start again. So in other words, it's that we go into everything we do in life with it being a destination, and we tell ourselves happiness is a destination, success is a destination, self-love is a destination, growth is a destination, and we put that pinpoint on the map, and then when we get there, we're like, oh, well, might stick around here for a couple of weeks, and then it's on to the next. So it's just to remember that it's all about the journey. It's the way that it's the things that you learn about yourself from A to B. It's not about the fact that when you get there that everything is going to be better again, because you will be at like a level 1, and then you will have a new destination which will be level B, and you'll always be continuously learning and growing and evolving, and that's exactly what you want. But at the end of the day, and me and my girlfriend say this to ourselves all the time, is that it is all for the plot. It is all for the fucking plot. It's the things that you learn, it's the understandings that you have of yourself. And it's just that when you are in this, look at it as, you will look back on it and think, oh, remember that when I did that? It was so funny the way that I used that, and like, look at me now, you know what I mean? It's always about having that reflection and looking back on yourself and how far that you've come. But just that real stiff reminder that it's a journey. It's a journey. It's not a destination, but it is a fucking fun journey. So enjoy the journey. And don't be too hard on yourself, because there's always new lessons to be learned. We're always going to be, and that is always going to be the way. It's never going to change. And that is the episode for today. So thank you for joining me. I hope that this has been insightful for you. It was an episode that is really close to my heart, because I've just been having a rough couple of weeks, and especially when you're like, I know how I should be dealing with this, I know, but you just can't kind of get yourself over that little hump. This is a reminder that it's all for the fucking plot, baby. So thank you for joining me for another episode of Girls Who Get It this week. I will be back next week, and we'll be discussing something else that's close to my heart. Love yous.